Hello YouTube, LD50 here, back with another video, and today we're going to talk about my Lazy Moze build. I call it Lazy Moze because it requires very little in the way of skill, and an old duffer like me, I like a build like this. It's a bit spray and pray, gets the job done, you don't have to think about it, you don't have to swap weapons too much or use fiddly mechanics to achieve high damage. You point the gun, you press the trigger and stuff dies. So this build is an Iron Cub build, not an Iron Bear build, so we're not going to be piloting, we're going to be using Iron Cub as support. And as I said, it revolves around the flipper, although other SMGs will work, and we'll go through those as we go through the gear and the build. So let's jump straight in. The flipper. The flipper is a fantastic SMG, Maliwan SMG, and it's available through the Bounty of Blood DLC, or as I like to call it, the Cowboy DLC, and it's available from Minosaur in the Blood Sun Canyon. Minosaur has a fairly high drop rate for this weapon. I think it's about 33%, so you should have no trouble being able to farm and get the version of this weapon that you want. It comes in all elements. The most preferable element combination would be radiation and cryo, because that will pretty much work on everything. However, there are some instances where you might want specific elements like fire or corrosive, depending on the enemy that you're going up against. An example of that would be Wotan, who is resistant to cryo, so in that instance you'd want to use corrosive. Or perhaps you're going up against Grave Ward. He's weak to fire, so if you have a fire weapon, you're going to get the most out of that particular weapon. Anointments that work, consecutive hits, a very good choice. Action skill, active anointments, so when you have Iron Cub active, you will get this bonus damage here. Be aware though that if you flip away from the weapon whilst your action skill is active, you lose the anointment. It's only active whilst you're holding that particular weapon. After exiting Iron Bear, next two mags will have 125 bonus incendiary damage. Well, what happens there is when Iron Cub is finished, when the action skill is ended, you'll be getting this bonus incendiary damage on your next two magazines. The build is not a full bottomless mags build, but it does have a fair bit of ammo regen, so this could be a good choice. I personally find this anointment a little bit fiddly to use, so I prefer the consecutive hits, or even elemental critical hits cause status effects of the element to explode, blah 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 blah. You can read it there. That's not a bad anointment as well, as long as you're aiming for critical hits. Other SMGs that could work are Devoted. Any Maliwan SMG will deal splash damage. The flipper is possibly the best, but a Devoted perhaps, or an Embers Purge, or if you have the Arms Race DLC and you can be bothered to run through it, a Plasma Core would also work. I also like to keep a couple of Monarchs on me for situations where there are a lot of flying enemies, because I do find that the projectile speed from the Maliwan weapons can be a little bit slow and can be a bit difficult to hit racks and other flying enemies. So in situations, say, like the Slaughter Shaft, Creature Slaughter Shaft in Promethea, that would require a faster bullet, so that's why I keep the Monarchs on me. But mainly I'm using the Maliwan flipper SMGs. Now, if you don't know about the flipper, the longer you hold your finger on the trigger, the more projectiles you get. So as the weapon starts to fire, it has a single projectile, then that goes to 3, then 5, and then ends up at a diamond pattern of 9. I'll just demonstrate that now. So as you can see, we're now getting a diamond pattern of 9 projectiles. So that increases the damage quite a lot. And as we're able to keep our finger on the trigger because of the ammo regen on this build. We're able to keep that diamond pattern going for longer, which increases our chances of scoring critical hits. It increases the overall damage and provides a sort of wall of death in front of us. Shields. I like to use a stopgap. And this one has, after exiting Iron Bear, kills increase Iron Bear's cooldown rate by 30%. Well, you can substitute Bear for Cub. The anointment will work with Iron Cub as well, and the way it works is when Iron Cub finishes, when the action skill is over, that's when the anointment becomes live, and kills from then on will increase Iron Cub's cooldown. The grenade we want to use is a cloning maddening tracker, or any decent tracker grenade that has at least Merv and Bouncy as attributes, because that will give us extra hits. This particular grenade will hit for 18 times, so it splits into, whilst it's in flight, each of those splits into 3 Merv grenades, and each Merv grenade can bounce and detonate up to 3 times, giving us 18 hits for a single throw of the grenade. I'm using the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge because that is a great multiplicative damage boost. It's very easy to keep these consecutive hit stacks going with the flipper, and also this particular Pearl has increased magazine size and fire rate, so having a larger magazine size will help us with the skills that regen ammo based upon magazine size. Comms. Well, there are 2 good comms you really want to use: Blastmaster or a Minesweeper. The Blastmaster I have here has a point in redistribution, the green skill, which will help give us with ammo regen. The Minesweeper does also come with that skill as a boost, but my version doesn't have that. At some point I will probably go and look and try and farm for a better Minesweeper, but the Minesweeper is something you might want to use more with bossing, and the Blastmaster is more suitable to general mobbing areas, but in this video we'll probably be exclusively using the Blastmaster. So that's our equipment. We're going to go through the skills now. As you can see, we're only taking 1 of the capstones, and we're putting points all over the place. What I will say is that I'm not an expert on Moze. This is the build that I like to use. I'm sure you can get more damage out of Moze, but this is the build that I like to use. So I've got points all over the place. We'll start with the bottomless mags tree. It's not a full bottomless mags build, so we're not going all the way down to forge, but we are going down as far as redistribution. So we're putting 5 out of 5 into Cloud of Lead, so that gives us bonus incendiary damage for every 4th shot, and every 4th shot doesn't consume ammo, so it's cutting our ammo consumption by 25%, and it's giving us this extra incendiary damage, and that's allowing us to get down to redistribution, so we can put a single point here, which is then boosted further by the com, giving us ammo generation and a bit of health regeneration for critical hits. With the diamond spread of the flipper, it's easier to hit critical hits, so we're going to be activating redistribution more often. In the shield redistribution, the red tree, we just want to get down as far as drowning in brass, so I'm putting a single point into security bear for the Iron Cub damage reduction, and 4 points into armored infantry for some gun damage and damage reduction, but that's allowing us to get down to drowning in brass. Drowning in brass is a great skill. It's 20% gun damage per stack. It stacks 3 times, so we're going to get up to 60% extra damage. We'll talk about our action skill and our action skill weapons as well in a moment. On the blue tree, we're wanting to take everything in the top row here. 5 out of 5 into Grizzled, because that gives us extra cooldown. 3 out of 3 into Deadlines, which is going to help keep Iron Cub out there longer. we're getting some fuel back and the fuel drain is reduced. And fire in the Skag Den, whenever we deal splash damage, we deal bonus incendiary damage. Well, all Maliwan weapons deal splash damage, so that means that any weapon that we use that's from Maliwan will give us bonus incendiary damage. If we just go back and have a look at the flipper again, this particular flipper has fire and shock, so when it's set to fire to shock like that, we will be getting shock and bonus fire damage. If we had it set to fire, we'd be getting fire plus bonus fire damage, and if we had something like this on with a corrosive element, we would get corrosive and fire. Moving down the tree, 3 out of 3 into means of destruction. Whenever Moze deals splash damage, there's a chance to add ammo to our currently equipped weapons magazine. So it is a 10% ammo chance. We have 9 projectiles and we have a fast fire rate, so we're able to activate this skill a lot, giving us this ammo regen. And as we've mentioned, Maliwan weapons do splash damage, so no problems there. 5 out of 5 into stainless steel bear for extra damage, armor and extra fuel. So it says iron bear here, but you can substitute the word bear and put in iron cub, so it works with iron cub as well. So iron cub gains additional armor, increased maximum fuel and increased damage, so lasts a bit longer, hits a bit harder and is a little bit more tanky. The comm that we have is putting a point into pull the holy pin and 3 points into vampire. If I had to choose my comm, I would have preferred to have 4 points into vampire and 1 into redistribution, but this is the comm that I have. Finally, we're going down, we're putting 4 points into explosive punctuation. When Moze deals splash damage, her action skill cooldown is briefly increased, so whilst we're dealing this splash damage from the Maliwan weapons, we're helping to increase the cooldown, which is getting our Iron Cub back quicker. And finally, a point into short fuse. Now this is a great capstone. Whenever Moze deals guns damage, there is a chance of a secondary explosion centered on the target. So that's a 1 in 5 chance, a 20% chance, and it will give us 75% of gun damage. But with the flipper having the diamond pattern of 9 projectiles and firing quickly, we're going to be activating short fuse most of the time. And then finally, the purple tree. We want to take 5 out of 5 into really big guns because, again, substituting the word bear for cub, Iron Cub gains increased damage. It's a 20% damage increase. And whilst Moze's action skill is cooling down, she deals incendiary damage. So big surplus here is going to give us some extra incendiary damage whilst Iron Cub is on cooldown. 3 out of 5 into biofuel, just a few points there to give us some extra health regen. Moze doesn't have a lot of health regen skills, so with vampire and with biofuel and with redistribution, that should be enough to keep us alive. And then explosive fury, Moze and Iron Bear gain increased status effect damage and status effect chance. Again, substitute the word cub for bear there, so Moze and Iron Cub. And what this is doing is increasing our chances to apply dots, and applying dots like igniting our enemy here. Applying dots would give us activate biofuel, and it also increases the damage of our status effects, our damage over time, our dots. Single point down here into fired up to increase our fire rate, and again applying the status effect will increase our fire rate, so increased chance to apply the status effect, ups our DPS by using fired up. 5 out of 5 into never going to give you up, which is the rickrolling skill. Whenever Moze or Iron Bear, substitute Cub, whenever Moze or Iron Cub applies a status effect to an enemy, Iron Bear gains fuel. We're applying our status effect, or increasing the chances of applying our status effect with Explosive Fury, which is activating the rickrolling skill, never going to give you up. And then finally we have a single point down here into feature creep. Iron Bear damage is increased, Iron Bear damage resistance. So it's giving us a little bit more damage to Iron Cub. Obviously we're substituting Cub for Bear there because this skill works with both Iron Cub and Iron Bear, and giving us a little bit more damage resistant, making Iron Cub a little bit more tanky. So our action skill, obviously, as we've talked about, is Iron Cub. This is not a piloting build. This is using Iron Cub to support us. And I like to use Efficiency Engine, which is giving us a sort of stacking gun damage. So the longer that we have Iron Cub out for, the greater the damage that Moze does. Now, Iron Cub base duration is 100 seconds, so without anything to increase the duration, we would get 100 seconds by half a second, so we'd get a 50% gun damage there. But as we have some skills that can increase the duration of Iron Cub, we can increase our gun damage the longer the Iron Cub is out there. And then we're going to use the railguns. Now, the reason we use the railguns is that Iron Cub is not very smart. Iron Cub will try to fire through obstacles to get to an enemy, and if Iron Cub is using a splash weapon, so for instance if we had gone down the green tree and we had gone down as far as exploding bullets, which is a splash type weapon for Iron Cub, we would be at risk of damaging or basically killing Iron Cub. It would kill itself. As I said, not very smart. It will try and fire through obstacles to get to enemies, so use an option that doesn't deal the splash damage. So we're using railgun, and we're going to use capacitive armature. Capacitive armature is a great weapon to have for Iron Cub because number one, it's shock, so it will strip shields, and number two, it will chain from enemy to enemy. So in a mobbing situation, Iron Cub can strip the shields for you, and then Moze can finish off the enemies. In a situation like Grave Ward, perhaps you might want to change to Hell on Rails if your enemy is weak to fire. But generally I'm using capacitive armature for most of the action that we do with this build. So that's our build. Shield of Retribution down to Drowning in Brass, Bottomless Mags down to Redistribution, Demolition Woman all the way down to Short Fuse, and then Bear Mother just down to Feature Creep there. We are using our Guardian rank here, topped off. Shield Reboot and Emergency Response are very good skills to get for this build, because we want to activate, let's go back to it, we want to activate Armoured Infantry, so while Moze's shields are active she gains damage reduction and increased gun damage, so the quicker we can get our shields back, the better. We're playing this on Mayhem 11, so you can see that this will work at the most challenging content. And that is our build. What we'll do now is we'll jump into some combat. I think we'll go over to Athenas, and then perhaps we'll do a Grave Ward, and probably go and do a Wotan kill as well, just to show that it can work in all situations, even the more challenging content in the game. So we'll leave that here. I will jump over to Athenas and catch up with you there. See you in a moment. Welcome back. We're here at Athenas. We're going to run through this map to the final boss, and on this particular map what we're going to do is we're going to try 4 different Maliwan SMGs, because all Maliwan SMGs do splash damage, so they will all work with this build. However, some are better than others. As I've said in the build video, the main part of the video, the flipper is my favourite. We do have an Embers Purge here, which is a DLC 1 weapon. It's a crew challenge weapon. We have a plasma coil, which is an arms race DLC weapon, and we have a devoted, which is a vanilla game weapon. We'll try the different weapons out in different situations here, and we'll see how we get on. Bear in mind that the Embers Purge is pure fire, so against enemies that are resistant to fire we may have to swap away, but we'll use the flipper for the first area. Now, one thing to note before we proceed is, for this build I like to rebind my action skill and grenade skill keys. I'm playing on a PS4, and normally my action skill would be L1 and my grenade would be R1, but I find it difficult to fire and throw grenades at the same time, with both of those controls being on the right hand side of the controller, and I use my index finger for that side. So I rebind these keys so that my action skill is on the R1 button and my grenade is on the L1 button, which allows me to keep my finger on the trigger and throw grenades at the same time. And the way that we do that is we go into options, we go into controls, we move across to the controller here, and we go down to the key that we want to change. So currently we have action skill on L1 and throw grenade on R1. So what we're going to do is swap them round. So action skill, if we press X, it'll allow us to bind it to a different key. So we're now going to bind it to R1, and as you can see now, throwing grenade, which was bound to R1, is not bound to anything. So we'll repeat that and we'll bind that to L1. Now we can activate our action skill using R1, and we can throw grenade with L1. That's a little trick, little play tip or play trick that will help you with this build. We'll move forward. We'll use the flipper on the first area. Get Iron Cub out there. Iron Cub will probably take care of a lot of these. As you can see, capacitive armature does chain from one enemy to the next. Throw grenades out to keep our damage up. As you can see, we're regenning enough ammo with this particular gun to keep us at full capacity, which means we haven't reloaded, and if we haven't reloaded, that means we're getting the full splash damage bonus from our comm. And there we go. Iron Cub has done the work for us. I think in the next area we'll try the Embers Purge, which is the weapon that we get from DLC 1, the Hamson Jackpot Crew Challenge. Much higher fire rate, much more difficult to regen the ammo, which means that we will probably have to reload, and by reloading we're going to lose the splash damage. You can see that the weapon is dropping lava pools there, and it's the lava pools that do the immense damage with this particular build. We're getting a bit of ammo regen there, so it's not too bad. Iron Cub has gone. We'll have to wait for Iron Cub to come back. So we're a little bit vulnerable at the moment because we only have a fire weapon. We have nothing to strip the shields with. And as soon as we get a lava pool down, the splash damage from the lava pool is taking care of business for us. Iron Cub's back. Iron Cub will take care of some shields for us. And in fact, we'll take care of most of the enemies for us. We have one more up there. There we go. So, moving forward to the next area, I think we'll try the plasma coil. Those people that are familiar with the game will know that the plasma coil is a very, very OP weapon, so we should have no trouble with this next area. But Iron Cub himself is taking care of most of the business for us. There we go. That's that area completed. And for the last area, I think we'll try this Devoted. Excuse me. Iron Cub lagging behind there somewhat, but he should catch up to the action fairly soon. The Devoted doesn't have any lag time on the shot, as you can see here. It'll fire immediately, as most Malawan weapons have a lag time. But the special effect with this weapon is it fires faster the longer you hold the trigger. We'll get Iron Cub back in a moment. We have a flamethrower heavy over there, so we'll change to the alternate element on this gun, just to take care of him. Iron Cub has come back. Let's throw a grenade out so we can get some healing back. Taking a little bit of damage there, but we've successfully completed that area. I think we'll return to the flipper for this last little area and the boss. There we go. I want to resist reloading for the last boss. We may have to reload during the fight, in which case we may lose some splash damage. Well, let's see how we get on. We managed it without reloading. So yes, flipper is the preferred weapon for this build, just because of the way that it fires, the fire rate, the damage and the magazine size. But it is a DLC weapon, so you'd obviously need to have the DLC to get it. But as you can see, there are other options available, including vanilla weapons like the Devoted. So we've run through Athena's here. We'll go over to Grave Ward now. We'll swap up our gear a little bit, and I'll go through that when we get to Grave Ward. And then I think after Grave Ward we will do a Wotan kill as well, just to show you that this build is viable for the hard content in the game as well. So I'll meet you over at Grave Ward in just a moment. Welcome back. We're here at Grave Ward, and we have equipped our action skill active anointed flipper, and we've switched it to fire. And I've also equipped an old god that has bonus incendiary damage. So as we talked about in the build, the element that the old god is resistant to will provide bonus damage to that element. So this one is resistant to fire, so it gives us bonus incendiary damage. I've also set Iron Cub's railgun to hell on rails for fire damage, because Gravewood is weak to fire. We'll jump down. We'll probably ignore his first phase where he tilts, just because we want to see what we can do without having to dodge those corrosive balls. So let's jump down. Activate Iron Cub. He can start doing a little bit of damage if he decides to. No, he's going to thoroughly ignore. Now let's start on to Graveward. Keep throwing those grenades. And there you go. Pretty straightforward. I don't think our little Iron Cub there did much. I think he ignored Graveward, to be quite honest with you. But as you can see, plenty of damage from this gun. We were able to keep firing and made short work of Graveward. I think what we'll do is we'll pop over to Midnight Cairns. I'll run through and I'll catch up with you back up with you when I'm just about to face Wotan, and we'll try a Wotan kill with this build. So I'll see you over there. Welcome back. We've made our way through the Malawan takedown and we're about to take on Wotan. I have equipped consecutive hits flipper for when for general mobbing in the area, and also for when Iron Cub is not active. And I have my action skill active. Weapon damage is increased by 200%. Anointed flipper for when Iron Cub is active. We've set our action skill active weapon to corrosive, and we'll have our consecutive hits to shock. We'll jump down, we'll strip his shield, we'll change over to the action skill active flipper, activate Iron Cub, and we'll go to town.
Now that is definitely your target. Light that giant bastard up.
Keep lobbing out grenades.
Check out that body count.
And as you can see, absolutely no problem at all taking care of Wotan in the Malawan takedown. That was a pretty good fight actually. Not bad at all, fairly quick.
Fine, be that way. I'll just kick
We'll
ass
recap
on my own.
the build and the weapons, and then we'll leave it there. So this build is revolving around the flippers or other Malawan splash damage SMGs. My favourite is the flipper. For this particular kill we were using the stopgap but we could also use the Old God like we did in for Grave Ward if you have the right element, or a different anointed stopgap, or perhaps the Transformer. We were using the Blastmaster to give us this bonus splash damage when we don't reload, and also because it has a 1 point in redistribution, which allows us to regen ammo on crits. This particular one has splash damage, weapon damage and SMG damage passives. For this build you really do want to be looking for SMG damage. It's quite a big multiplicative damage. We were using the Pearl, we were using our cloning Magnum tracker to help us get health back, and also to activate the on grenade throw, weapon grenade and action skill damage are increased by 25% for 6 seconds anointment. Here's our skill tree, red tree, down to drowning in brass so that we can get capacitive armature. Green tree, just 5 points into cloud of lead and a single point into redistribution. Purple tree, all the way down to get a single point into feature creep, and never going to give you up, the Rick rolling skill. Blue tree all the way to the bottom to get short fuse, and obviously our com was giving us points in vampire, which was helping us to regen health as well. Leaving alone tall cross promotion because there's sufficient splash with this build as it is, and quite honestly, if you do spec into tall cross promotion in a mobbing situation, you are more likely to kill yourself than you are to kill the enemies. So that is our build, and we've done some mobbing on Athenas, we've taken care of Grave Ward, and we've now just taken care of Wotan. So I hope this demonstrates that this build is powerful enough. It's certainly a lot of fun to play, and importantly it's very low skill to play. So if you're an old duffer like me who doesn't have the reactions of a 5-year-old, then this is the build for you. Very low skill, that's why I call it Lazy Moze, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've been LD50, you've been lovely, and catch me in the next one. One little note please, if you have enjoyed the content, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Bye for now.